back to the USA from the Middle East, which will mean jobs, jobs, jobs. The president also called out NATO allies, accusing them of not paying their fair share on defense. Here's what he told U.S. troops earlier today in Italy.
I will tell you a big difference over the last year. Money is actually starting to pour into NATO from countries that would not have been doing what they're doing now had I not been elected. I can tell you that. Money is starting to pour in.
In just a couple of hours, the president is expected to land at Joint Base Andrews and head back to the White House, where he'll likely have very little time to get over his jet lag. His administration facing new accusations this weekend in the investigation into its ties with Russia. We have Fox team coverage on this. Garrett Tenney is live in Washington. But first, we go to Amy Kellogg in Italy. All right, Amy, did President Trump or his people comment on the firestorm brewing back here at home?
No, they did not, Laura. President Trump did not give any press conferences on this trip, and even his advisors, including National Security Advisor General H.R. McMaster, who did comment today, would not say anything about those reports, one of which is that senior Trump advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, suggested opening a back channel, a secure channel of communication with the Russians during the transition. General McMaster, though, refusing to comment on this today when asked, said the idea in theory would not necessarily have been a bad or unethical one. The second report causing a stir is that Kushner had more contact than previously disclosed with the Russian ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. About this, Kushner attorney Jamie Gorelick said, quote, Mr. Kushner participated in thousands of calls in this time period. He has no recollection of the calls described. We have asked for the dates of such alleged calls so we may look into it and respond, but we have not received such information. Jared Kushner, Laura, incidentally, was very instrumental in putting together the Middle East part of this trip, but he returned back to Washington after meeting the Pope earlier this week, Laura.
And Amy, what are people saying would have been the purpose of these back-channel communications?
Well, our understanding is that they would have enabled the United States to get some conversations going with the Russians about possibly settling the situation in Syria and other areas of military cooperation. However, this ostensibly would have been so that short-lived National Security Advisor General Mike Flynn could have spoken in a secure way with Russian generals who otherwise might not have entered into communications with the Americans. This secure communication line was never established. There have been suggestions from people close to Kushner. There's also the possibility that the Russians could have put this information out to confuse intelligence or discredit Trump. And of course, Laura, this is all part of the bigger probe or controversy about whether Team Trump in any way colluded with the Russians to try to influence the 2016 elections. Laura.
All right, Amy Kellogg for us as night falls in Italy. Thank you for that report. And President Trump returning home to a number of political challenges, including big decisions on the next FBI director and the Paris Climate Accord. Garrett Tenney, live in D.C. on this one. Garrett, all right, so how close is the president to making those decisions? They are big ones.
Well, Laura, the Paris Climate Accord was a hot topic at the G7 meetings yesterday. The 6 other world leaders signed a document reaffirming their commitment to the climate deal and did their best to convince President Trump to support the deal as well, despite his vows on the campaign trail to rip it up once he took office. In the end, he told them he wanted to take some more time to make up his mind, but a top aide said the president had listened carefully to their arguments and is, quote, evolving on the issue. He may not have needed much time after all, though. This morning he tweeted, I will make my final decision on the Paris Accord next week. And one of his biggest concerns all along with the deal has been that it could cause the U.S. to fall behind countries like China and India in job creation, since they are not a part of the deal. Now, as for the biggest job opening back here at home, it may be a little bit while longer before the president selects the new FBI director. Earlier this week, he asked his team to expand the search for a new director and to line up more candidates for him to consider when he got back. Laura?
You know, Garrett, there's also all these reports the president is looking at making some changes around the White House as well. We keep hearing that. Do we know anything more about that?
Well, it's no secret there are a number of controversies awaiting the president back at home, namely the investigations into Russia and any connections to his team. And there have been concerns that those investigations could bog down any progress on the administration's agenda. The White House feels like it has a lot of momentum after this trip, though, and it wants to use that to help push the president's agenda. So there are a number of changes being discussed to do that, including building out the president's legal team. This past week, the president also hired his longtime attorney, Mark Kasowitz, to represent him in the federal investigation. And the idea is by adding more lawyers to handle everything on that front, the administration will be able to focus the White House staff on all of its efforts to advance the agenda. We're told there are several other changes being considered as well, including a staff shakeup and potentially having lawyers vet the president's tweets before they go out in order to avoid any more distractions. Those changes will be the subject of meetings this week, and we're told that, of course, the president will have the final say on what changes go through. Laura?
All right, Garrett Tenney, certainly a very interesting time. Thank you very much.
You got it.
And President Trump wrapping up his first foreign trip with a speech to U.S. troops in Sicily. The president talking about the fight against terrorism, as well as our nation's gratitude to its service members. We have much more on those remarks later in the hour. And this is a Fox News alert. British police putting out new photos of the man they say is responsible for killing 22 people at a concert in Manchester. And this is a Fox News alert. British police releasing new pictures of the alleged Manchester bomber the night they say he killed 22 people at an Ariana Grande concert. Now, the picture shows him wearing sneakers, jeans, and a dark jacket and a baseball cap. Take a look closely. You can see the straps of a bag on his shoulders. Investigators say they're hoping to get more information on the suspect to piece together what he did in his final days and to find out whether anyone else was involved. Rick Leventhal has more on this from Manchester, England.
Laura, new information and new images tonight from Manchester police of the man they say carried out that deadly bombing outside the Manchester Arena on Monday night. The images show Salman Abedi wearing the backpack they say he detonated, killing 22 and injuring more than 100. They've also released new information on the investigation as the UK remains on high alert for the possibility of another attack. Authorities say 1,000 officers and specialists have been working around the clock since Monday night, and within 2 hours they'd identified Abedi as the man who carried out the horrific plot. Since then, investigators have focused on retracing his every step and finding every person he had contact with or who may have supported him financially or materially in collecting supplies and building his bomb, which police now say was finally assembled in a rented apartment just a couple of miles from the arena. 17 different raids have been carried out since Tuesday morning, 14 locations still roped off and being searched, and 11 people arrested are still in custody, suspected of ties to terrorism and possibly to Abedi himself. And while the terror threat level has been reduced from critical to severe, the UK remains on high alert for the possibility of another attack this holiday bank weekend, prompting extra security and a ring of steel around some 1,300 different events, including the Football Association Cup final at Wembley Stadium, where 90,000 fans were greeted by officers in armored vehicles and extra checkpoints. Meanwhile, the mourning continues for those 22 killed, including 2 mothers who were waiting to pick up their daughters as the concert was ending. And of the 116 people hurt in the blast, 60 of them are still hospitalized, 20 in critical care. Laura?
Rick Leventhal in Manchester, England. And here at home, major cities and airports across the U.S. ramping up security for Memorial Day weekend. Ellison Barber joins us now from Washington with the latest.
Well, Laura, for those of us living in major cities, we tend to expect more security on big holidays, and this weekend is no exception. In D.C., there are major events from the annual motorcycle ride Rolling Thunder to the National Memorial Day Parade. Because of that, Park Police typically have additional officers working this weekend. And they often carry out surge patrols. It involves a team of rifle officers flooding different monuments and memorials at different times. But they say that is normal. In a statement, a spokesperson for the U.S. Park Police said, quote, "This is all standard operating procedure from Memorial Day weekend and not a reaction to any specific threat." D.C. police won't publicly discuss details of their security plans, but say they're ready to respond any weekend should something happen. And the police chief tells Fox News he's told his team to make sure that this weekend they are, quote, particularly visible. The idea goes for cities like New York and Las Vegas as well, and also for airports all across the country. DHS Secretary John Kelly visited Reagan National Airport to meet with TSA agents as they prepare for this weekend and what's expected to be a pretty busy summer. Kelly said there is not a specific threat this weekend, but officials are always on alert.
I am very, very confident that we're doing a very effective job in protecting. Now, that said, it's a constant threat, and we always have to be vigilant.
Earlier this week, TSA officials told Fox News they're testing new screening procedures at about a dozen U.S. airports, and it could mean more bag checks. AAA expects 39.3 million people to travel this weekend. Laura?
All right, Ellison Barber for us. Thanks. An enormous IT system failure wreaking havoc at two of the busiest.
This is costing our customers, and we understand how frustrating this must be, especially for families hoping to get away on holiday.
The British Airways CEO apologizing to passengers after an enormous computer system failure affected countless passengers worldwide. This IT crash forced the airline to cancel all flights out of London. Kitty Logan is in London with more on this.
Hi, Laura. Well, the CEO of British Airways says the problem wasn't caused by a cyber attack. It appears to be a power supply issue. It's caused misery for tens of thousands of travellers this holiday weekend. The glitch has resulted in all flights from London's two main airports, Heathrow and Gatwick, being cancelled for the entire day. The problem started on Saturday morning, with BA announcing an IT failure was affecting systems worldwide. This is a busy holiday weekend for the UK, with tens of thousands of people travelling. British Airways operates hundreds of flights from these airports on an average day, many of those with connections around the world, including to and from the US. Departure terminals were chaotic, crowded with waiting passengers all day. There were long lines at check-in counters, but many of these people ended up going nowhere. Some passengers tweeted they were stuck on planes held on the tarmac, waiting for takeoff. Others said they couldn't even transfer through these airports, as the airline wasn't able to access their travel details. Call centres were affected too. A handful of flights did land today, and the airline says services should be back up and running by Sunday. But it's not quite over yet. These are busy airports, and with aircraft out of place, there could be further disruption for some days to come. For many, that holiday weekend is already ruined. Laura?
Indeed. Kitty Logan for us in London. Thank you. All right, this Memorial Day weekend, we are learning the name of another American soldier killed in the line of duty in northern Syria. 22-year-old Etienne Murphy was an Army Ranger from Boston. The Pentagon says the soldier was on his first deployment when he died in a vehicle rollover yesterday. Murphy had received numerous awards and decorations in his short career. He's one of 3 American service members who have died in Syria since U.S. troops arrived there last year. This Memorial Day, we remember all of our fallen American servicemen and women. More than 1 million veterans in total have paid the ultimate sacrifice fighting for our country in defense of our nation's freedom. Here's a quick look at some of the conflicts that claimed most of the lives. Beginning with the American Revolution, more than 4,400 soldiers were killed. The War of 1812 resulted in more than 2,200 deaths, and some 1,000 people were killed in the Indian Wars. Then, in the Mexican War, we saw more than 13,000 soldier deaths, nearly 500,000 in the Civil War, and more than 2,400 in the Spanish-American War. And in World War I, more than 116,000 American service members were killed, more than 405,000 in World War II, and more than 36,000 in the Korean War. Then, in the Vietnam War, more than 58,000 died, nearly 400 in Desert Storm, and nearly 7,000 in the War on Terror in Iraq and Afghanistan. President Trump spoke to a crowd of troops today, thanking them for their service and vowing to defeat terror. Hear what he had to say next. Report. Let's get you caught up on today's headlines. President Trump expected to land in the United States in the next couple of hours, ending his first foreign trip as commander-in-chief. The president touting his progress on trade and defense spending and claiming that he's bringing hundreds of billions of dollars back to the U.S. This comes after a jam-packed 9 days that saw the president crisscrossing the Middle East, visiting the historic homes of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and an effort to strengthen the coalition against ISIS and lay the groundwork for peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians. President Trump wrapped up his trip at a naval base in Sicily, where he addressed U.S. service members on this Memorial Day weekend. Listen.
I can think of no better way to conclude our first foreign trip than to spend the time with you right here, with the incredible men and women of the United States Navy, and with all of our brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and our great civilians who support them, right? A very proud nation salutes you. A very, very proud nation. I'll tell you what, we are very, very proud of you. Every single day you protect the safety and security of the American people and provide a symbol of hope, freedom, and justice for the world. To our friends and allies, you are the ultimate reassurance. To our enemies, you are the ultimate deterrent. You're the metal spine forged out of the fires of American strength. And you notice how much stronger we're getting? Have you feeling it? Are you feeling it? All that new equipment is coming in. You saw what we did with our military budget, way up. Took a little heat on that one, but it's okay with me. You are the men and women who make up the most powerful military in the world. And under my administration, as you know, you've seen it, right? Under my administration, stronger and stronger every single day. I want to thank Captain Brent Trickle for leading the American presence at the hub of the Med. You know what that is, right? The hub of the Med. Captain Trickle, considering everything your team has done to prepare for this visit, and you really have done a lot, I've seen it, feel free to sound Liberty Call as soon as wheels are up, okay? That sounds, maybe I'll stay down with you and celebrate together and just wave. But before going any further, I also want to express on behalf of the United States our gratitude to our Italian and NATO allies here today. We have a lot of them. You're stationed at the crossroads of the Mediterranean, working side by side with Americans to confront the threats associated with the tremendous violence, suffering, and instability across North Africa and the Middle East. To every service member from Italy, from a NATO country, we want to thank you for your friendship and for partnering with us in the fight to defeat terrorism and protect civilization. Better believe it. Terrorism is a threat, bad threat, to all of humanity, and together we will overcome this threat. We will win. But none of what we achieve would be possible without our wonderful military spouses and families. Each of you makes these great sacrifices for our country as well. Let's hear it for the military spouses, please. We will always support you, and we will never, ever forget you. That I can tell you. There is one more very special group I have to thank, and that is our 8th grade students right here in Sigonella. Where are they? Oh, here they are. I've been hearing a lot about you. In January, the 8th grade class at Sigonella came all the way from Washington to march in my inaugural parade, right? Look at you. They're all so happy. Young. You're going to have a great life, right? Great life. Thank you very much. And I have to say, are you all glad you did it? Yeah. Thank you, honey. It's an image I will always remember, your smiling faces right out in front of the White House, carrying that great, big, beautiful American flag, right? Thank you, kids. You traveled all the way from Italy to support my inauguration, so today I'm glad to be here, and I traveled a long way to support you, and it's my honor. Thank you very much. Military children also make great sacrifices for their country, and I want you all to know that America is so proud of you. As you know, I was here in Sicily to attend very important summit meetings, the meeting of the G7. It was a tremendously productive meeting where I strengthened America bonds. We have great bonds with other countries. And with some of our closest allies, we concluded a truly historic week for our country. Our travels took us to some of the holiest sites in the three Abrahamic religions, and to gatherings of both America's oldest and newest friends. We traveled the world to strengthen long-standing alliances and to form a new partnership among nations devoted to the task of eradicating the terrorism that plagues our planet. And we've got the people that can do it, believe me. And I am now more hopeful than ever in the possibility that nations of many faiths and from many religions and from many regions all over, can join together in a common cause. The barbaric attack in Manchester and the massacre of innocent young lives underscores the depth of the evil we face and the urgent need for us to join forces to absolutely and totally defeat it.
Well, we've got a big Fox News Sunday tomorrow for you. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly will be on to talk terrorism. There'll also be an exclusive interview with Senators Dick Durbin and Bill Cassidy on the budget and health care. Again, that's on Fox News Sunday. Check your local listings. And President Trump has repeatedly promised to take care of veterans. Now, a group of Cold War-era service members are turning to the president in hopes of settling a decades-long legal battle against the CIA. Claudia Cowan has this story.
See this guy being carried by his medic and his nurse? That's exactly what it was like when I was taking the drug test.
In 1968, while Bill Blazinski was serving in the Army, he volunteered to be a test subject at Edgewood Arsenal, the Army's research lab outside Washington, D.C.
The Medical Volunteer Company is an essential link in the chain of our national defense.
Between 1956 and 1975, thousands of soldiers took part in top-secret experiments to help the Army develop biological and chemical warfare. Blazinski says he was exposed to CS tear gas 3 times and believes it caused his chronic health problems, including leukemia.
I inhaled a drug, a chemical, and within 5 minutes, I couldn't feel my legs.
And 50 years later, Frank Rochelle says he still has nightmares after testing a potent hallucinogenic so strong he thought the freckles on his arms had become insects.
And I went in the bathroom and tried to cut the bugs out from under my skin.
Frank and Bill speak for roughly 7,000 Cold War-era veterans who, in 2009, filed a class-action lawsuit demanding treatment for health problems they claim were caused by these experiments. Tests to develop weapons the Army said would incapacitate enemy soldiers.
Incapacitated, not really hurt, but temporarily useless in a military